Good morning. Keep this in mind. Brought to you by brought to you by SpectHealth.com or DavidASpecht.com. I am David A. Specht. How are y'all doing this morning? I know we're a little bit later than normal with the show, but I have a very special show to bring to you today that I think will impact you in a lot of ways. And I just want to tell a story. So, in 2010, I got fired. No, you didn't see it. You didn't see me searching for jobs. You didn't see me on LinkedIn putting available newspaper publisher. But in a sense, I got fired. The newspaper I was running was not performing at the level that ownership thought it should be. And my role was translated to another role. Vice President of Special Projects, meaning you're not publishing the newspaper anymore. I know for my dad, who was the owner, it was a tough decision. And I know when you have to transfer or let somebody go, to them it's an event. But to you, it's a building up to an event that involves your emotions, that involves your wrestling with your own thoughts. Have I given them enough chances? Have I really began to really dive in if I failed them as a leader? So when I got fired in 2010, it was an event to me. And yes, it hurt. It hurt that especially coming from family, I felt like I had somehow failed as a son. I thought that somehow I had failed his expectations of me. And I'm sure on his side of the equation, he felt he had failed me as a leader and maybe even as a father. So it was a very interesting time. And it really did put a strain on our relationship. But what came out of that was I began to look at my own self and say, how can I be better at what I do? How can I prove to him that I am worthy of being in the position that I wanted to be in? How do I prove to myself that this was truly just an event and not an identity? So I began to really reevaluate who I was, how I was. I was a great team player. Whenever the new publisher needed assistance or whenever he needed me to introduce him, I still worked in the same building, which was, again, kind of a weird situation. But I did my dead level best to be a good soldier and to take the firing for what it was. And so as the Vice President of Special Projects, I really dove in to make some really, really good projects. I really wanted to show everybody that I was worthy. And so over the course of the next several months, that's what I intended to do. I was working very diligently. I was building relationships. I was doing the things that I knew needed to be done to be a better leader, to be a better employee, to bring value to the company. Then in 2011, an illness took my father's life. And that was the turning point. All of a sudden, I went from fired publisher to somebody who had the weight of the entire company on his shoulders. I had a president and she was doing a bang-up job and a great job, but I knew that ultimately the person with the last name Specht was the one where everything was going to rise and fall. And so I began to do even more deep diving. I began to read books like The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I began to read Good to Great. I took a business publication from just reporting the news to trying to convey education, business education, finding the things that are working in other places and writing about those things and sharing resources. It was a mission, but it was also reciprocal because I was learning while I was sharing. You see, the event of itself was the defining moment, the catalyst moment, the pick your word moment that got me out of my own way to say, you know what? Status quo is not going to work for you, David. In fact, you're going to have to step things up in a way that maybe be uncomfortable. You're going to have to not always cheerlead. So my firing was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. We have navigated since 2011 some really, really tough times. There's been tough decisions that had to be made. There are people in the newspaper industry that are no longer there. There are newspapers that no longer exist, and yet through all of that, we have made it. We have done what it has taken, and we continue to do so. But would that have happened if I'd have just been allowed to float along? Would have I stepped into leadership and learning about leadership and trying to improve me if I had not had that, what I considered at the time, catastrophic event? I almost laugh thinking about it now. As I thought about that story, this morning, I was reminded of a video I saw from Tom Hanks. He's sitting around a table with, I think, Adam Sandler, Jamie Foxx, several other actors and entertainers. And he said, the most powerful phrase in the universe is this: this too shall pass. He says, are you in a valley? This too shall pass. Is everything going well? This too shall pass. And if you understand the concept of this too shall pass, you realize that when you're in the valley, it's not forever. I wasn't fired forever. And in fact, my life is so exponentially better today than it was in 2010 because of the valley and several valleys since then. And if you're on the mountaintop and you think everything is going your way and you're just on top of the world, can I tell you, this too shall pass? Prepare yourself for the valley. So when you're faced with a situation, know that things can either happen to you or they can happen for you. And in the moment, it feels like they happen to you. But can I tell you that my firing in 2010 has produced so much of a better David in 2023 than I ever could have imagined. And I want to encourage you today that if you're in the valley, just know this too shall pass. God bless.